Buenos dias. I am Gail Hunger, and I am very honored to be invited here today by the Catholic University of Temuco to talk about the important issues of STEM education. I work at the University of Virginia, where I work in the sciences and mathematics to design authentic instruction in the classroom using technology-enhanced learning. And I will share some of these experiences and courses with you today. A little bit about me is that I used to be a mathematics instructor, and I did that for a very long time before I got involved in course design at another institution in Virginia, where we redesigned a space for active learning spaces and redesigned math classes. And that is when I got involved in my new field of instructional design and technology, where I work now at the University of Virginia to teach classes and design classes for technology-enhanced learning. So I can see some of you, and I just wondered if you would be able to raise your hand, and I'd like to know a little bit about you. Who here are faculty that are teaching in the STEM areas? You can raise the hands high. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Bernardo. And students, who are students here for this important conversation? Welcome. This is a very important conversation, both locally and globally, this conversation in STEM. So for the next few days, I'm really glad that we're all here to have this conversation. And many of us haven't experienced some of the things that we're talking about. Me didn't have the experience to learn math and science in this authentic way that we have been talking about so far. So in doing a little research before coming to Temuco, I thought, how do we get inspired to want to teach this way and learn this way? I think it all makes sense to us. So I researched and I found that one of my favorite poets, Pablo Neruda, grew up in Temuco. And he always wrote his poems in green ink. And he did that for a symbol of hope and inspiration for himself. So throughout this conversation and the next few days, I would like to encourage us all to think about what is our symbol for hope and inspiration, to want to transform courses into more meaningful experiences. Because it does take more work to do this, and I think everyone here has demonstrated that it's definitely working for students and they're enjoying it and they're learning more. But it does take time to think about it, and we have to inspire ourselves. So I want for us to all think about that. So for today's talk, just an overview, what I will do is I will talk about STEM education from a research perspective. I will talk about, as there's the group C did here, our group is Learning, Design, and Technology. I will talk about the elements of how our group at University of Virginia works with faculty. I will talk about the initiatives and some cases, and learning spaces is something else that I know that has been touched upon already, and we'll talk about how we do that there. So we have talked about STEM, what STEM means this morning, and the American colleges and universities talk about why are we talking about STEM. The other part is to think about is high impact practices, which a lot of has been spoken about already. But we have to look at educational practices. How do we create collaborative assignments? What are the projects? What is experiential learning? And how do we design it? Those are the things that we are thinking about here. And how do we create common experiences across the different disciplines so that we know that students are learning and making the connections that they need to transfer for this knowledge to be integrated thinkers for the future. So one way that we like to look at it is to design courses is really a new model for how to think about it. Before, it was the faculty and the information that they needed to share with the students. And then we had tests and quizzes and things like that. So in this model for our group, we like to think about where the course and the student are at the center, and that we need a lot of different types of expertise to design the models. So we saw pictures of videos and animations and things like that. We also need librarians. We also need teaching, or you all call them learning assistants. We need many different people as part of this team to build a well-designed course. Another thing that our team works closely on is to create a course design that's intentional, authentic, and engaged. So I'll talk more about that. So for intentionality, many times we create activities in our courses and we hope that it will work and that the learning will occur. With intentional course design, we work with faculty to see what is it that they really believe needs to occur for the learning for students, and that all of the activities are designed intentionally instead of incidentally. Sometimes learning happens anyway, but we try to scaffold this in a way that students can experience success with intentional course design. So that's something that we begin with at the framework, and this could be both implicit and explicit, so things can happen internally and externally as we work with faculty and students. So for the next component that we think about is authentic course design. There's the authentic instruction, what happens with the students, and what happens with the faculty. Sometimes authentic course design, we have many different interpretations for what authenticity can be for each of us. But this is a research-based approach from Harrington and Oliver, and it's really about creating real-world experiences or authentic apprenticeships and what experiences we're giving the students. The way that, since I can give my math example, which I like to give in this example, real-world math examples are not two trains are leaving from the station and one gets there before the other. These are not what people consider to be authentic math problems. Those are very contrived, and how many people do not like those types of problems? I am one of them. I don't like doing those types of problems. So it's really about what is it, if you wanted to think about if you were an engineer, or if you were a physicist or a chemist, what are the types of things you have to think about in that field? It does not have to be exactly something that you would do at the grocery store and count how many of these cans you need and how much will that cost. That's true, but that's not what we're trying to get at here. That's not what we would consider authentic. So what types of things students are doing? They're solving real problems that are true to whatever that field would be. And it might just be problem solving in that field. And different fields look at critical thinking in different ways. What questions might you ask yourself if you were approaching this problem as a physicist would be very different than what questions you might ask yourself if you were approaching this as a mathematician. So really thinking thoughtfully about that is something that we have been working very closely with faculty on. We have an authentic learning initiative that is 2 semesters long. This is just the model that's been working for us currently. It's not a workshop and it's not training. It's a conversation or a community of practice where we have roundtables with faculty. There are elements of authentic instruction that we discuss. Some of the elements we discuss are context. How will you create the context in your class? How would you create assessments? And how would you create the tasks? And what is it that you really want to bring out and have your students think about? So we have monthly roundtables. We also then meet individually with faculty and talk to them individually about their course or their program or their project they want to work on, and focus on specifically what they want to work on and what they want to develop before we talk about the technology. That's very important. And what we also do is bring the team-based approach into that. So if there's someone from the library or there's some technical developer, something we need to develop, we bring those people to the conversation as they are needed. And we also have design thinking forums where we invite faculty to come share their strategies and what's worked well with them, and have open forum discussions there. And this initiative has been very successful, and faculty have enjoyed participating in it, and each group, it becomes a community practice that grows larger. The engaged portion of the course design is really to think about how students will engage with each other, engage with the information, and engage with the faculty member. But the idea is to look at, I really like these topics of looking at how do they express curiosity, how do they get intrigued by the content of the course. This is really at the heart of the matter. What would make me curious to be an engineer? Why would I want to do that? What would make me want to think about, this is a lot of hard work. The sciences are hard, it's a lot of hard work. What would make me curious? What would make me want to persevere? What experiences will you give me so I can be successful here? That's what we talk about. Why do we want to encourage students to be in these fields. We need them desperately. So how do we create an environment where we're having these ideas and questions in our minds? And it's very hard not to go back to, well, when I was a student, I had to work hard, and this is how it needs to be. So we really need to engage ourselves and say, how can we inspire this new generation to want to think about things differently, or want to be curious about this field? I had a faculty member I worked with in statistics, and we were talking about equations, and she was lecturing to 200 people. And I said, what made you decide to be a statistician? And she said, well, I was, good at it, and I worked in the field. And I said, what did you do in the field? And she explained her daily endeavors. And I said, did you ever share that with your students? Like, what does an actual statistician do in a certain corporation? And she said, well, I haven't really thought about that. I haven't never shared that. And I thought that could inspire someone in your class, and they might want to hear about that, or talk about that, or ask. So these are opportunities that I think are authentic in nature that we need to share with students, or have them ask us. Maybe they interview us. Another initiative that we are beginning this year is an e-portfolio initiative, where students are encouraged to create their own e-portfolios. And this initiative is going to be very important. Over the next few years, every student will be given an e-portfolio and asked to reflect upon their own experience. We don't start this like a checklist approach. We start this asking them to create one, just to have one that's creative. They can create a professional one, and they could create one that's about their learning. And I'm teaching a course in that right now, and students are really reflecting on what they are interested in and what they're cultivating in themselves. And if they start that as a freshman, by a senior, I think they will understand their story better. When you think about your story of how you got to be a teacher or a student and how you got there, you think about that years later, but imagine the connections you might make all the way through if you were asked to think about those things all the way through. This is an example of a young woman who's doing science, but since doing the portfolio, she's realized, oh yes, I really love music too. And she's created a whole story about that. And she shows her papers, her works that she's doing, the connections she's making. And she's doing that all 4 years. So imagine what she'll be able to tell when she goes to apply for graduate school or talk to an employer or talk to anyone about her life. It's a very different experience having reflected all the way through that. So I just wanted to give a few cases now of different classes that we have worked to transform in terms of authenticity. And we didn't really start saying authenticity, but it ended up in the conversation when we had those round tables. So the first course is an ecology lab. I had a graduate student and a faculty member talk with me about how they could help this lab because it was too technical. They had many things in Excel. The students weren't understanding the mathematics. There are 4 faculty members who teach that. They weren't all teaching things consistently. So they wanted to work together to create a common experience for students with the materials and in the course. And so there were a lot of challenges there in terms of consistency, and the students were not having a good experience. So through the conversations, what we did was I realized that this was a course that had writing component that was mandatory for second-year students, and that was not being addressed. So we came up with a way to do that where they created cases that were authentic to the field. So they had 2 different ecologists with their philosophical framework, and students were asked to play the role of defending which perspective they had to talk about. And they had to defend their answers. And you can see in the picture, they had to stand up and present and justify their thinking together. And then they had to write about it, and they learned how to write like an ecologist. And so it's really about the habit of mind of how would you think like an ecologist. What are the questions you ask yourselves when you're looking at the stream? They're very different than the questions I personally ask myself when I look at a stream. I learned a lot of things about how an ecologist looks at the stream. Another example is a physics lab, and we did a course redesign there. Now this lab was I call it a high-stakes environment. The students were given a prescriptive set of instructions from a lab manual, and for 2 hours they had to perform them. They could not make any mistakes. They had to get it right, and they worked sort of competitively in each team to try to solve the problem, and everybody was very unhappy and stressed out. And they came to me and they said, well, what could we do? So the first thing that he did was he created videos of how to just set up the technical instruments of the lab. That seemed to alleviate a lot of stress because students could review that ahead of time, watch that, then they were required to take a quiz. And when they were in the lab, they also could watch that video again to make sure they had it all set up correctly, which saved them a lot of time so they knew what they were doing was okay. The other thing is he provided demonstrations using the technology that they had to use. A lot of times they were asked to use Excel or different types of things, and students didn't always know how to do that. I'm not sure how that is here, but we assume students are all the time on devices so they know how to use all these tools, but they really do not. Excel was not something they were all proficient in. So there were tutorials about that, and then when they came in. The next thing we're going to work on is the mathematics, because they were expecting them to remember things for years that they hadn't done. So we're going to create videos about typical mistakes that people make with different algebraic concepts that they haven't used in a while. And I find that if you engage students in how do you figure this out, it's a good mistake, but it's wrong. It's very interesting to people, and they understand how to solve it then, and they think through it in a different way than just being lectured again how to do that. Another byproduct of this that was not intentional, although I'm really glad happened, was that this really become a community of practice among the teaching assistants. We have a lunch or coffee, and we have discussions about teaching and learning. And they say that they haven't had as many people interested in this ever before as this year. And people walk through the hallway. When I used to walk through the hallway, it was very different. Now everyone's engaged and they're talking to each other. They're trying to come up with scenarios. And there are two TAs who are in charge, and they created a problem-based scenario for other TAs, and they did a role play, and they had to solve the problems of the lab, they were silly problems, like the heating wasn't on, the computer didn't work, the printer didn't work, how do you get paper for the printer? And they all thought it was fun, and I said, they said, why are we doing this? And I said, why do you think we're doing it? And they said, because we don't know this. And they said, okay. So I said, imagine how your students feel in the lab when they have all of this very difficult equipment and a very huge lab to do every time. And so it really brought a different level of understanding and community around it. And everyone's just working together to learn, and it's very inspiring. And it's fun. Oh, I skipped one. So the last case I wanted to talk about was a biostats course. Statistics has been charged with creating connections in the medical field and with the commerce school. And the course is traditionally lecture-based. It was, everything was about the content, and it was very theoretical. And the statistics department has worked with us, and they said, we know we could make this better, but we need help to do this. And so very interesting things happened. They went and moved their class to an active learning space. This woman, Jessica, she participated in the Authentic Learning Initiative, and what really she thought about over time was there was no authentic data for the students to actually look at. They were bored. The students didn't find any relevance in looking at the textbook that they had. They were very bored by this experience, and everybody was, just learning the formulas and getting through it. So what they decided to do was they found somebody in the medical school who could share with them their authentic data. But he is very busy, and so we decided to record it. And so they presented that recording of him presenting that virtually. And so we use a tool called Blackboard Collaborate that I know that you all have here. And they recorded that in Blackboard Collaborate, so they had somebody from the field that they were all interested in presenting that they could now use every semester they teach it because it's recorded. Students loved the ability to be able to watch this over and over again. They found that was very helpful, and they wanted to see different parts. And he shared his data, which was authentic, and they found that meaningful because they got to see what would actually happen in the field. How would this look if I was in the field of medicine? And then they invited him to come back, and they could ask questions and get them answered. And everybody thought this was a great component of the class, and the students we gave a survey, and they said they found that very helpful and relevant. So the next thing that our group works with is active learning spaces. And I know that you have them here. We saw pictures of that in chemistry. And these classes, maybe they don't have to have all the screens even. Mostly it's the room needs to be set flexibly where students can all sit together at a table. We have tables of 9, 3 groups of 3. There are many different models. This is the one that we've chosen. What we've found is students need places to write. Even a chalkboard or a whiteboard is really helpful because they need to write out their thinking. And they need to be able to see each other's laptops, and so sitting at a table really works well. It doesn't have to be so high-tech. When the classes get larger, though, they do. One fun picture, this is a room of 80 students, and this is the statistics class. And something I've piloted this semester based on a conference I went to, which has been very successful, and it's not a huge thing, is this throwable mic. And the reason that this is very important is that the students say they can hear the faculty member, but when other students are talking across the room, and there's 80 in there, it's very hard to hear each other. And students being able to talk to each other and listen to their explanations and thinking helps them more deeply understand the material, and it helps them understand each other. And the research shows that if they are explaining it to each other, they're going to retain that information more, and peers listen to each other much more than they listen to us as faculty. Nothing personal, that's just the way it is. And the reason is that they can access each other's information. They're at a different level. It just works. So this has been a very safe way for students to talk because it's a very soft padded box, and they can throw it to each other nicely, and they can just talk into it. They don't have to hold like a mic like this. Nobody likes to do that. They just tried to hand me one. I was like, no. So nobody really likes that, but this has been very safe for people to try. We also have innovation spaces where we're looking in the arts, sciences, and humanities. We're going to have 3 different ones. And this is a music class where they are using a lot of the different tools and materials there. And they're experimenting with different things. And you could see the faculty member not even in the picture, but they are more as a guide on the side than they're not teaching it. So they're experimenting. They can work in a hands-on environment, and it's very creative. And it's the experience that students really want. So, in thinking about why you would work with CDID or Learning Design and Technology, we get asked this question often. So, I think that the types of things that get designed with this intentional, authentic, and engaged model are really different than we have to do this and we don't know how to do it. And I think it provides a space for people to think and do what they think is most important in the field, or what's the most important in the program that you're trying to promote or design. So it's an intentional design. And the things that I just thought you might want to know the successes that we've had. It does save time. I've had faculty come to me and say, I flipped it, it didn't work, and I did it all by myself. And they told me the things that they did, and I said that I'm sorry that happened, and why were you flipping? And they said, well, because I just, that's the new thing I should do, and I should flip. And then they told me all the technical issues that they had, that they actually really liked lecturing more. And it was a class of not very many students. So I said, well, it's better to think about why you'd want to flip than doing all of that work alone. And then coming back and realizing you don't like it. Because we have tried many things, and we're here to, a team like ours is there to help you save time and think through it. And think about what you really wanted to. If you wanted to flip, why you would want to do that. So, and it should be about the learning and not just about the convenience that students will say to you, well, I don't really like listening in lecture. That would not be a good reason because they probably won't want to watch the video either. You have to be more intentional about that. It has to be about how are we enhancing the learning. So go back to the example of the virtual presenter. You would virtually present and record that because you won't have access to that person otherwise. And one of my favorite stories is that one of the faculty who taught film, he invited Oliver Stone into his class. So you wouldn't get Oliver Stone to come to your class normally. So think about who you might want to invite to your class, because you can have anyone all over the world who is an expert in your field come speak. And students really do value that. So these are just some of the reasons, and there's been a lot of collaboration across departments. And we're hoping that there's a lot of collaboration across our institution and this institution, because we're looking at redesigning courses that maybe will be taught in Spanish. So that would be another authentic interaction and collaboration that we could have. So I just wanted to leave you with that Pablo Neruda quote, and really hope in the next few days that we can think openly and be inspired about what we would want to design and how we design it for our students in the STEM fields. Thank you very much. Are we going to do questions, Hector? I don't know if we were going to do any questions. Almost left.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your participation. It was very interesting. The first question is, did you work with the students for other universities in your projects? This is the first question.
Do I work with other students in the university?
In other universities.
In other universities?
Yes.
Yes, I have. I've worked at many other different institutions in Virginia, and I also work in other states. I have done some consulting work looking at how students learn and giving them experiences so that they can learn and experience it in a new way to learn. Did I answer that?
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for
It
coming.
was very enlightening. And I want to ask you, how do you manage to measure, to assess the impact of your innovations over student satisfaction or over outcomes, of learning outcomes?
Yeah, something I didn't say, thank you for asking that question. We work with faculty to create midterm surveys, and there's always a typical final evaluation. But what we do tell faculty is when you do change things and redesign, often students are not very satisfied. So there's ways you need to ask questions. We do action research survey mostly and say what's going well, what's not going well. And we do that multiple times throughout the semester, which helps the faculty member to adjust what they're doing and then talk with the students so the students know that their concerns or their issues are being heard. And so I encourage faculty to do that. So those are the ways we're measuring right now. But we are working on a more authentic assessment as well. We're doing focus groups and interviews as well, because we want to hear why. So we use the survey to start the conversation, and then we invite students. We had students, graduate students, and faculty talk about those questions, and they explain what they're talking about so that we can adjust what we're doing. Thank you.
Hello, back here.
Hi.
We have a question here. Is it about the course redesigning process? Is it, does it take place upon faculty members' request, or is it institutionally promoted and supported? Thank you.
Thank you. It is, it's driven by faculty. We are there to facilitate what the faculty want to redesign. That said, at the college that I'm at, there is an initiative and support from the leadership to do this. But it is not driven that they must do it. It's more, let's rethink how we can make courses more relevant. But it's not we have to, but inevitably we do have to do some redesign of things. And the course sizes and things like that need to be, that is being re-looked at, because in the sciences our courses are very, very large, and in the humanities they're very, very small. So we are looking at different models for how to do those types of courses. Thank you. Did that answer that? And we can talk after too. Anymore? I can't see anything. Okay, well, I will be available if you would like to talk further, and I appreciate it, and thank you very much
Gail,
for having me.
Gail,
Oh,
don't go away
nope,
yet.
I knew I missed it.
I have a question for you.
Bernardo.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's me. Can you tell us a bit more about how the STEM disciplines are structured at the University of Virginia? I mean, do you have a STEM faculty or a science faculty or an engineering faculty or combination of all of them? I mean, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Okay.
And a second part to that question would be, are you also looking at a STEAM with an A in between?
Yes, thank you. Yes, and I'll ask, James can correct me, but currently how it is the sciences and mathematics are in the college, and engineering is its own school. And we work with the provost's office to have STEM conversations. The vice provost for academic innovation has brought together a group to talk about STEM. And in terms of STEAM, which is the A for astronomy, in our authentic learning group, we have an astrophysicist in our group right now, and last year we had an astronomer. So we don't say STEM, I'm not sure why we don't say that, but we definitely, astronomy is in our group. Did that answer that, Bernardo? No.
I really meant STEAM with A representing arts.
Oh, arts, that's
Sorry.
right. I always think astronomy. We are the science and humanities, so we do have arts in our authentic. We are working with the arts as well. Thank you for that correction. Okay. Yes,
I can ask another one if you want me to.
you could tell a joke though if you wanted to.
Yeah, I could tell a joke in Spanish as well. Anyway, what about promoting creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship? How does it fit into what you're doing at Virginia?
I think through the Authentic Initiative, those types of conversations emerge. And so creativity and critical thinking in the field is where it occurs. The entrepreneurship is a new conversation that's emerging as well. So in those conversations about how do we create who we are, and I even think the ePortfolio initiative also brings in the entrepreneurship. Okay, well, thank you very much, and very nice to talk with you.